I hope you had fun in your last class, because your last class was learning how to do dramas and role plays. And so hopefully you wrote some good ones and you exaggerated. Well, an important element, though, for each one of you is, if you're going to be a good teacher, you need to use these teaching techniques. But you also need to have something in front of you that will help you know what to teach, what questions to ask, etc. And this is called a lesson plan. And a lesson plan is generally a short plan that talks about what that class is going to be. What I want you to do in your home groups is that to talk about what I want to have on a piece of paper in front of me that would help me teach using some of these styles. But what kind of things would I want on or in a lesson plan? So go into your groups, take a few minutes, talk about what are the things that you'd like on a lesson plan, and then we'll come back and do some more talking. Well, welcome back. You just spent some time going over what are some things that you would like to see in a lesson plan so that you can teach. And a lesson plan is really critical for you because you're going to go over on your first trip and do a vision seminar. And you don't want to have to wing it, and you don't want to have to create your own lesson plan. And then you're going to go over and teach and train people to be trainers. Well, you want to have something in front of you. Therefore, what we've come up with over the years is a standard format. Right now, we have about 1,200 lessons, and those lessons are all in the exact same format. They all look the same, whether it's on evangelism, how to know Jesus, whether it's on worms, whether it's on emotional problems, whether it's on how to do and start a business, whatever, they all look exactly the same. So, what I want to do is spend a few minutes with you and explain our format, so when you go over in that first trip and you get ready to train those trainers in your church over there, you'll be able to use these lessons. So they all look like this. At the top, of course, is the title. And the title might be evangelism, it might be worms, it might be diarrhea, but it's the topic. And then objectives. The objectives are, what are the objectives for this particular class period? And by the way, most of the lesson plans are designed for 1 hour. If your students aren't getting it and it's going to take 2 hours, that's okay. Don't rush it. It's much better that they understand. If the lesson is longer than 1 hour, it'll say it up here in the corner. And so the objectives are, what do you want to accomplish as you're teaching this lesson? And you list, the participants will be able to share this truth with their neighbor, or whatever it might be. Overview for the trainer is really for you to know where it fits. Overview means that this is on worms, or this is on diarrhea. And typically in teaching these lessons, there's a series of about 4 or 5 lessons. And in those 4 or 5 lessons, a lesson might be, what causes diarrhea? Another might be, when do I need to go to the doctor? Another might be, what do I do when my kid gets diarrhea? Another might be, how do you prevent it? So what this will say, this is the second lesson in the diarrhea series. Or if you're teaching a TOT, a training of trainers, this might say, this is only used in an urban setting, this lesson. So it just gives you a hint. Now, the heart of the lesson, though, is right here. You see these lines. You see there a line across here and a line across here. This is what you're going to be using. This you look at ahead of time, and down here you look at ahead of time. But this is what you're really going to be teaching from. And you see that the lesson is divided into 3 columns. The first column on the left is method. And what that is, what method will I use to get after the content, because remember, where's the content going to come from? It's going to be coming from the different individuals, the answers. So this might say, break the group into 3 small groups, and in those small groups have them discuss what causes diarrhea. Then over here, under knowledge, Roman numeral 1, it would say, what causes diarrhea? And then here are the expected answers. Dirty water, bad food, whatever they might be. Now, also, sometimes there'll be a lot. Generally, there'll be at least 3 or 4, because the kind of questions that we ask elicit a series of answers, not just what color is blue or green. So it elicits, so you pull piece here, piece here, piece here. But you don't have to see that every answer comes out. If an answer is missing that's important, you might frame your question a little bit differently to get at that missing one, or you might give it at the end. Now, the center column is very important. That's the time column. How long should it take you to do each one of these different sections? And most of the sections will be from 7. If it's in a large group, it'll be 7 to 10 minutes. If we break you into small groups, it will say 20 minutes. Now, that doesn't mean 20 minutes to discuss the question. That means 20 minutes to discuss the question and then report back. And the way that we report back is when you have different groups, you go around from group 1 to group 2 to group 3 and say, group 1, give me one answer. Group 2, give me a second answer. Group 3, give me another answer. Group 1, give me another answer. And you keep going instead of saying, group 1, give me all your answers. Because if you did that, then group 2 would only have a few, and by the time you got to group 3, everything's been given and you want to involve. So, if it says 20 minutes for a small group, that means about 7 to 10 minutes in discussion, and then about the same amount of time reporting back. Okay, you see that there are different Roman numerals. Roman numeral 1, you talk about that question. Roman numeral number 2, Roman numeral number 3. Now, not all lessons, but a lot of the physical lessons for the whole series, there'll be one that's an analogy. An analogy is a bridge from physical to spiritual. So an example, scabies is a really good one. Many of the Americans I know don't know what scabies is. It's a small little animal that you can't see, mite, and a little bug, and it burrows under the skin. And generally it burrows under the skin where there are folds of skin. And as it burrows under there, it starts to itch. And as you itch, it goes to other parts of the body. Now, if you're in a home overseas where 2 and 3 or 4 kids sleep in the same bed, it spreads that way too. And eventually it affects many different folds of your body. Well, there's a spiritual problem that starts very small. You really don't even see it. But then it begins to grow. And that spiritual problem is sin. And so, an analogy. So you go through this, and each one of these lessons, as I said, is about an hour in duration. Now, down here below the line are some added extra hints, so to speak. There are 4 different pieces. They aren't part of what you're teaching, but if you don't have the answers to this, you won't have the kind of results. One is, what kind of attitude do you want the teacher to have? Now, some of the answers that your students will come up with will be off the wall. Many of them will be answers that you don't think, how could they ever come up with? One time I asked, what causes malaria? And one of the people said, oh, that's from eating green corn. Now, I could have said, where'd you come up with that stupid answer? But I didn't. I said, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. What's it like when you're eating green corn? Well, it's early in the season. Okay, what's happening? So anyway, The idea is you want to build up your students. You don't want to tear them down. The second is really a key one, though. What skill do you want the student to have when they're done with this 1-hour class? Remember, in Lepsis, we talked about the A. Well, the action is the skill. Make up oral rehydration solution. Do a home visit so they can teach on diarrhea. The third is evaluation. Now, in CDT, we do not do paper and pencil examination. You know, in schools here, you give people paper and pencil and they get a 70%, they pass. They get less, they flunk. That's not the way you evaluate. The way that you evaluate is by observing what they're doing. How are they teaching? How are they demonstrating making up ORS or getting clean water? So it's an evaluation, really looking more at their skills, because if their skills are there, then their head knowledge should be there. And then the last one is critical, and if you forget it, you could be in trouble when you're trying to teach this lesson. And this is just a list of what do I need to teach this lesson. If I'm going to teach on oral rehydration solution, I need to have clean water. I need a glass to put it in. I need sugar. I need salt. And it just reminds you before you go to class, do I have everything I'm supposed to have? It may say, like here in my lesson on lesson plans, it says, have a template so that you can talk about lesson plans. So this format, every lesson that we have of the 1200 is in this exact same format, so that anybody can pick up this lesson once you understand it and teach from it. Once you understand and use the participatory styles that we've been talking about, you can do that because the participatory style is all built in right here. And so the idea is to give you a very strong tool so when you go overseas that you'll have something that you can use to teach. Now, is this the Holy Grail that should never be changed? Everything is chiseled in stone like the Ten Commandments? You can change it. You can modify it. In fact, you want to. But this is a good starting point for you. So, lesson plans. This, you may not appreciate it now. You'll appreciate it much more on your first trip and your second trip because you'll have something that will help you be a good teacher if you remember to use the Lepsis style of teaching.